I haven't really kept up with idols in terms of their, social medias and whatnot in the past year or so. So it was a pretty big surprise to me to see that they were on another album cycle, even though Ultra Mono only came out September last year, I think it was. So basically, 12 months later, they've already, got a new album underway. They dropped a few singles. Was pretty underwhelmed with their last album Ultra Mono. So, it wasn't like I was too excited for this one. But it seems as though they were trying to head in a bit of a different direction. There was reports very recently, before this album had even dropped, that they were planning to kick out some songs from their live shows, particularly the one that stood out and was the one that was in the headlines was Model Village from Ultra Mono. I mean, I don't know if, they saw my review and I bullied them into kicking songs from that album out of their live shows. Probably not, but it would be kind of funny to see if that was true. But it seemed as though that them as a band, Joe particularly, was like, nah, this isn't who I am anymore. The anger that I expressed on that album isn't me. I've been to therapy. I've changed. I don't want to direct my anger outwards. I want to kind of reflect on myself and think about how I can be better, which I thought was a really mature step to take, to be honest. I think more people really should have been complimentary and admirable of Joe to kind of just come out and say something like that. A pretty brave thing to say. They've touched on mental health before. Sorry, itchy nose. I wasn't like lying then, by the way. I know some people touch their nose when they lie. They've touched on mental health before. Lying. No, they have touched on mental health before in the past. And, they've been pretty good at touching on those topics, to be fair. Their main theme has always been, anger and disdain towards the British government and the way things currently are in the UK. So, obviously the mental health thing has kind of took a bit of a backseat to that. But for me, I think they really ran out of ideas on their last one, and they were essentially just shouting slogans the whole way through. It doesn't even matter what side of the fence you sit on politically. You can't just listen to these lyrics and think they're saying anything noteworthy, because they just weren't saying anything noteworthy at all. They were just saying things that, yeah, everyone stand up and clap. We said it. We were the ones to say it. So yeah, I certainly welcome this change in pace, even if it is only a year after. I'm a bit jaded with idols, to be honest, and I think this album settled that for me, because in terms of the sound, I don't really feel like there's been any much of a progression at all. I thought the opening track was setting things up to be an interesting progression, but it just kind of got killed off very quickly. Sinister as Hell really worked for them. It sounded so dark and gloomy. It sounded like some of the dark and gloomy moments of any Gareth Lydiard project. I don't just mean the drones, but I even mean some of his sort of like side projects like TFS, or even their newest album that he's been involved in as well. Just kind of had that awful sort of feeling. I actually thought it was quite interesting. I thought if they carried this on for a whole album, maybe it would get a little tiring, but it would offer a new perspective for the band that I thought they could have leaned into. But they didn't really do that. They didn't really do that. But they just kind of kill it off after that. I mean, The Wheel just goes for something quite anthemic and punky. Not necessarily in terms of the lyrical themes. Again, you don't really get that general state of, political anger on this album that you've had on past albums, which I will say I welcome, because I don't know if they do that particularly very well, or at least they haven't done in recent times anyway. But I don't know, just something about his vocals on this track that just sound really rough and like kind of grainy to me. I mean, he's never been the best singer, but I just think sometimes when they do try and go for those anthemic moments, it's hard to really feel like I'm sinking into the anthemic feel when his voice is just so. Then you've just got tracks like Car Crash, which, dare I say, is probably an apt title. I know it's a bit of a cliche to do that thing, but come on, man. This track just sounds like a mess. The vocals are muffled to fuck. The instrumental just sounds a bit all over the place, and I just think the way it all comes together, particularly with how the vocals meld with the song, which they don't meld, is the main issue, really. It just sounds like a complete car crash. Stockholm Syndrome as well has this weird recorded quality to it, where like you've got these like claustrophobic weird feelings that come through, and then you've got again the vocals that just sound kind of mismatched a little bit. Something just sounds quite off here. It's trying to be like hard and heavy, and I feel like I want to mosh, but I just feel like I'm holding back, and I don't know what it is. I can't figure out what it is particularly with the track, but something just sounds off with it. I can't work out what it is though. Maybe, again, it's a mixture of being just a bit jaded with them at the moment. Meds is a good example as well, like where it just really feels like it's been done before by this band, particularly on very recent albums. I mean, there's not been much of a gap between their albums, by the way, so you kind of have to remember that they've put out so much material in like 4 years that tracks like this just really do feel like I've heard it 5 or 6 times. It's got that bassy driven start, which I feel like that dung da da dung da da da, like I feel like they've done that like very often. And then the way it kind of builds towards the end of the track as well, just again feels like they're falling a bit into a habit of doing things they've done before. Some bands can get away with it. It's weird. Like some bands do very similar things very often. I mean, I've already mentioned Gareth Lydiard in this review. A lot of his projects are similar sounding, and maybe, you know, they get a pass and I'm not giving Idols a pass. Maybe that's something worth discussing. But I don't know, man. I just feel a bit like Idols, creativity-wise, just don't have much there. Like, it's a fine sounding song, but it just doesn't really amount to much. I don't really get much out of it by the end, and I'm just sort of waiting for these big moments to kind of strike me. I feel like Crawl has a potential sort of moment with that, with the guitar lead. I think the guitar sounds great on this track. I think it's structured pretty well too. So tracks like this work for me, but just so many others just don't. The New Sensation though, you can't get lower than this. This to me is just such a bad song. Like, what is going on here? It feels like they're trying to comment on something with the lyrics and trying to be sarcastic and snarky, and it just comes off really poor. It's like not funny at all either. Like, again, I'm trying to like pick out things in their lyrics where I'm just being like, okay, was this meant to be a joke, or am I just missing something? They've been funny before, to be fair. Like, they've had funny lyrics across their albums, 100%. You know, there were tracks on Brutalism that had some really funny lines, but they feel far removed from that now. I think I don't know what it is, but they just don't seem to capture that anymore. And yeah, this track, man, just hate the repetition of like the New Sensation thing on the chorus. God, I just don't like this. The Beachland Ballroom is one of the tracks that really touches on the mental health states quite deeply, you know, with having, you know, Joe talking about being on his knees. He's just, you know, crawling around, having nothing really to live for, sort of thing. Quite an interesting idea, although I wouldn't necessarily say they take it that far. Thought it could have been an interesting track lyrically, but they kind of just start repeating a lot of what they say across the song, which is a bit of a shame. Would have liked some new lyrical ideas coming through, but I just don't really feel like they extend it beyond the sort of standard motif of, you know, you're crawling on the floor, you're that low that you're on the floor. I mean, it's pretty standard generic stuff, isn't it, really? But yeah, I don't know. Again, I keep saying this, but I just think I'm losing my hope with these guys. I think tracks like Whiz sort of show that they could go in a new direction. I mean, this track is incredibly like hardcore punk inspired. It's just so throttling, and it's literally like 20 seconds, by the way. Like, they don't take it further than that. I kind of thought to myself, you know what, if they just did a full album of this, just bringing that kind of anger, just going straight at it for like you know, 30 minutes throttling. I feel like they could actually get away with it, and bring in those sinister vibes from that first track too. Probably would go down quite well. Just would be a nice change of pace. But they've kind of kept a lot of their musical ideas across this album, but just changed the lyrical ideas, really. Like, they've just changed their narrative but kept the same sort of musical ideas. And it sort of still feels like they're getting a bit old and a bit stale. It's a shame because, like I say, their last album really suffered from the fact that it just had nothing really new to say, and they were just shouting, you know, slogans at us that were politically charged but didn't really have much of a direction or much nuance to them. And they've took that away, and I'm still left feeling like I'm just not that impressed. So I feel a bit harsh here, but I don't know, this album's just not really hitting the spot for me. So yeah, unfortunately, I gotta go 5 out of 10. Not really feeling it. Maybe the next album's gonna be a skip from me. I do this occasionally if I just feel like I'm hitting a point where, you know what, the bands that I'm trying to like just aren't doing it for me anymore. May as well skip it, you know what I mean? There's no point wasting my time. But if there's a massive change of pace on the next one, and, you know, it feels like it's going to be completely new, I'll probably give it a go. But this one just feels, like I say, more of the same musically, not really that interesting lyrically either. I think if the lyrics were really deep and interesting, I would probably change my mind on this album, but they just don't really hit that level. Thank you for watching this review though. Hopefully you agree. Hopefully you're not too mad at me. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you disagree or agree. Whichever, tell me either way. Thank you for watching as always. Subscribe if you haven't already as well for more reviews, and have a good day. Goodbye.